call the Rules Committee to order. Ms. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Alderman Rhodey.
Present.
Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Volmer. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin.
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
You have 5 present, Alderwoman. You have a quorum.
Okay. Our first and only order of business is resolution number 173.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Resolution number 173, I believe needed to be done just to reflect our support and acknowledgement that we have to recognize and be a part of a movement that is long overdue. We also need to make sure that this body has the appropriate training for all those involved here and have an understanding of how we should interact with each other and respect each other. I do know that in the last session, we had an opportunity to do some equity training, but this is different and probably should have some additional training done for us here at the board, and recognize that the whole city of St. Louis and those entities that we are a part of also have that training. The personnel office says that in the personnel guideline book, there are some statements that are made about how to interact and respect others. I personally don't think it's enough. To me, it's vague. And with this resolution, I think that we need to make some suggestions to our personnel office on some things that should take place.
Okay, we'll take any questions or comments from the committee. Alderman Rhodey.
Do we have, have we been subject to any claims, or does anyone know? Have we paid out any claims? Or?
Well, we've
I know
had
the
some
state's going through it right
we've
now.
had some complaints recently,
Okay.
and I don't think we handled it appropriately. Some women here have complained about the language that's used referring to women, and a couple of people have suggested that they view a lot of unnecessary physical contact, and I don't think we've addressed it at all.
I asked the question not thinking that it's not a problem, but more that it's a problem that hasn't been, for whatever reason. I mean, when you have 4,000 or 5,000 employees, you're going to have something like, I would think that we would have had,
Now, the city of St. Louis as a whole, we've paid off some stuff, yes.
Oh, the city of St.
Oh,
Louis?
yeah, the city has, definitely. I was just referring
Is that
to,
all public, or I presume that's public?
it can be public, but they don't normally make it public. I was just talking about this body,
Okay,
yeah, but the city has.
okay.
People have been fired, all that.
No, I certainly have no problems with it. I was just wondering about, what we know, how much we know about the problem from the city, but this resolution is focused more specifically on the Board of Aldermen.
Absolutely. We refer to the city of St. Louis as a whole, but we have to start here and then make recommendations as we move forward for the entire city.
Well, it just talks about city ordinances and regulations, which I would think would mean that would involve personnel, and obviously whatever we expect for other people throughout the city, we should expect for, ourselves.
Right.
But I was just curious as to the extent of, I guess, the amount of information that's existing, that's public, I guess, or just trying to understand or quantify what, what our experience has been so far. Not that I don't think that there's probably more to be done, and I don't know, I don't have a question, I guess I'm rambling out loud, so I'll go ahead and shut up. Let the next person ask some questions.
Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How would you see doing this? Would this be a committee doing a review of the ordinances, or will you take that charge?
I think it could be handled one of two ways. One is that we do have a personnel committee that is really has the charge to do things like this. And/or if this committee wanted to take the challenge on and review the policies in a little bit, because our policies here are extremely lacking for this body. But for the city as a whole, if we wanted to look at what we have and where it needs to be enhanced, I think that the end result will probably be some new rules.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that this is clearly, obviously, an issue that we need to address in the city. What I guess, particular to this resolution, I'm seeing a disconnect between what you're saying and what the resolution's stating. The resolution just kind of generally speaks to the Me Too movement, but doesn't have any specifics as far as a committee reviewing rules. You mentioned having some training, which I assume would have a cost associated with it. So.
Well, actually, that is the resolve that's stated here. And it says that we shall recognize the Me Too movement and review all city ordinances and regulations in relation to sexual harassment to identify and determine that all workers, whether intern, volunteer, or employee, receive the same protections. And so it is asking for that review to take place.
I guess I would just echo the questions. Would it be happening in this committee as a whole, Board of Aldermen? How you envision maybe the steps of this taking place? And then again, I guess with regards to the training that you mentioned, if that would be something that would be handled within our Board of Aldermen budget, if that is something you envision happening citywide, if we have some funding associated with that, or how we would move forward with that.
For this body, we would handle our own, but we would also refer back to the process that we used before when we were dealing with racial sensitivity. And so the mayor's office would be responsible for the city employees as a whole. We would work with the personnel department to determine what is on the books, what needs to be strengthened. And then for this body, we will probably end up having at least one new rule. I'm envisioning two. And so I'm going to leave it up to the chair to make the decision if she wants that task here or put it in the personnel committee.
I think it might be helpful to include that in the resolution so that the resolution has some direction as far as how the board should be moving forward. The reviewing of rules, I think, is a worthy task, and perhaps we could just decide how that would move forward would be helpful in passing the resolution. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Alderwoman Morgan.
No questions.
Okay, I see Alderwoman Engrossment is here. Did you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you for asking.
So hearing,
Well, would just kind of following up, was it the sponsor's desire to go ahead and make that more specific so that we call out, for example, the public, would it be public employees or our personnel committee?
Personnel, I would think.
Is it your desire to make it more prescriptive or leave it kind of open-ended?
I have no issues with that if we wanted to add a statement referring to the personnel committee.
So you would envision us, the personnel committee, convening, contacting the human resources department, bringing them before us, and them actually doing most of the research as far as sharing that research as far as what they're currently doing, the amount of claims or whatever, the extent of the current issues, and is that what you would envision happening, or?
I think you can find out that information. I think what's more important at this point is to make sure that they do have specific training and specific procedures for handling problems that are claims that are brought before them.
Then would you be amenable to a friendly amendment, perhaps, that we could draft here together real quick? And I don't even have a pen to,
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm not much of a wordsmith.
I believed it was implied, but I mean, I guess if you
I-
all think that we need to add something
Well,
to it.
we can certainly leave it open-ended like this. It's just depending on how prescriptive you want. If you want to identify the committee that you want to have do it, that would, otherwise, the president would probably, be open to interpreting it however.
Yeah, if you just want to have an amendment, it would probably be appropriate to follow here in the resolve. And it says movement and review all city ordinances and regulations with city personnel committee and the personnel office and the personnel committee of the Board of Aldermen.
Recognize the meeting.
So maybe something like, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we shall recognize the Me Too movement by directing our Personnel Committee to review all city ordinances and regulations in relation to sexual harassment and identify and determine all workers, whether intern, volunteer, or employees, receive the same protections, and identify the actions taken by the
Or
city.
make recommendations. Or make
Yeah.
recommendations.
And make recommendations.
Back to the board by whatever date, September 1, December 1, or something.
Yeah, I think December is better because you know you'll be on summer break and lose that time.
Right.
Yes. Mhm.
Should recognize the Me Too movement.
By directing her personnel committee to review all city ordinances and regulations in relation to sexual harassment, to identify and determine all workers, whether intern, volunteer, or employees, determine
protections.
and make recommendations
Mhm.
to the full board.
To the full board by December 1, 2018. At 5 p.m. I was joking. By December 1, 2018.
Yeah.
At 4:59 p.m. Just joking.
On or prior to 4:51.
Do you want to go ahead and read that for us? Alderman?
Certainly. It says, "Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we shall recognize the Me Too movement by directing our Personnel Committee to review all city ordinances and regulations in relation to sexual harassment, to identify and determine that all workers, whether intern, volunteer, or employee, receives the same protections, and to make recommendations to the full Board of Aldermen by December 12th.
December
2000, or December, I'm sorry, I
We said
read that
one.
backwards.
We said
December,
12.
December 1, 2018.
Mhm.
I'll entertain a motion to introduce Amendment 1 to Resolution 173.
So moved.
Second.
Can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Alderman Rhodey,
Aye.
Alderman Kennedy,
Aye.
Alderman Volmer, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin,
Aye.
Chairwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
You have 5 aye votes, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so now that we have Amendment 1 to Resolution 173 before us, is there any more conversation about?
No, I just appreciate the input, and I think that there's a lot that we will learn in the process. And I think it's important to make sure that people feel as though we have identified the need.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion for passage of resolution 173
So moved. As amended.
as amended. Okay.
So-
Second?
Second.
Any objection to previous roll?
Request for previous roll.
Okay. Hearing no objection to previous roll, resolution 173 is out with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good idea.
Meeting is adjourned.
All
Timely.
right now.
Oh, here's your pen.